Thank you everyone for joining on another cmBuilder workshop. Our theme for today is Dune, so like very eerie setup over here, but it's great to pay some homage to this great movie. And let's jump right into it, right? So I have Javi here with me that he's gonna man the chat as usual. So like any questions that you guys have, just pop in the chat in the QA, and we'll be able to get to that. So our agenda for today is to explore a little bit more on the sketching feature, something that it's present in several tools in cmBuilder. You use the sketching to create your elements, and learning how to be efficient on while you doing that is quite interesting. Then we're gonna go into the update of the new timeline settings. Then we're gonna learn how to control the transformation handles, right? So there's a lot of questions that popped up recently about this, and I wanted to touch base on that. Some interesting updates that we've done for the import model feature, and then we're gonna go into some tips and tricks. Okay, so again, the recording of this session is going to be available on YouTube in 24 hours. And okay, PowerPoint presentation full screen. Thank you. I kind of prefer to do it without full screen because it's easier to control, but that's totally fine. Okay, so we have a lot of workshops available online as well for you to take a quick look on the things that we've talked about already. And again, you can use the chat or the QA for questions. Cool. So let's start with the sketch feature. Like I said, right? So it's a feature that is used in several different tools in cmBuilder. So massing uses it, zones, 3D lines, excavation, and linear resources. And I wanted to cover today like what every one of these buttons do and like how we can customize the settings and the properties so we can work a little bit better and more efficient with it. Okay. So
How you can
jumping.
how you can turn off the automatic snap.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah,
We
exactly.
get that a lot. Yeah, if you ever have your stuff automatically snapping to grid lines, you can turn this off. So
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So let's start with the basics, right? So what happens when I need to draw a sketch? The sketch tool, it's not something that is inherently something that you can start without a feature. You have to, the feature will use the features in cmBuilder, we will use the sketching tool, right? So for example, this zone over here that I drew, if I want to, I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to draw it again from scratch. So I'm going to activate the zoning tool, and the moment that my cursor becomes a little pen, it means that I'm going to start drawing a shape, a sketch, right? So one important thing to know about the sketching tool is that the first point that you added to the site, it will define what's going to be the elevation of that sketch. So your sketch, I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to start drawing from this point onwards. But you can see that the moment that I placed this point, like it's a grid line showed up with a lot of to define what is my sketch. So the sketch is a 2D canvas that is placed on a 3D environment. So it has an elevation to it, and that elevation is defined by this value over here, the plane offset. So this is the sea level elevation of my sketch. Okay, so why is this important? Is because whenever you're drawing with your sketch, if you're looking on a 3D view, you might be selecting points that are not necessarily the points that you want. So if I click on this corner over here, I think that I'm selecting that point, but if I look from above, I'm actually not selecting that point. So the first thing to talk about the sketching tool is that whenever you start to draw a sketch or you want to draw a sketch, you should always prioritize working on 2D mode for that, right? So I'm gonna flip my view over here to 2D to make sure that I'm selecting the correct points that I want, okay? So I'm gonna start the sketch again, and let's understand each one of these tools. So the moment that you start your sketch, you click to put in the first point, the line tool is going to be activated by default. So you can continue drawing your lines if you want by clicking and adding points, or if your line tool is activated, you want to deactivate the lining tool and like click on other tools. The first thing that I usually do is to click on the move function, because the move function kind of like clears up what is the active tool, and I can like move my view around quite easily. But the idea of the move function is that if you place a point in a line, so like let's go ahead and create like points over here. So if you create that, sorry, let me go back to that sketch. You can now use the move function to move the points, right, or the whole line in a uh, in your sketch, basically, right? So this is the move function, and the line function. Once you have like already lines applied to your view, you can click on the lines to add a point to that line, right? So if I want to click and add over here, I can do something like that, and I can also click on lines or points to delete them. So if I delete a point, the line is going to be recreated to connect the remaining 2 points. But if I could delete a line, I will create an opening on that location. Okay, so let me change my view to this view over here because it's a little bit easier to visualize the lines. Cool. So if I click on the line function and I want to restart my sketch, I can click on any of the edge points and then start placing my sketch again. So right now, let's say that I want to start interacting with my settings or something like that. So I will click on the move just to deactivate the line function so the line is not activated anymore, right? So the third option over here is the arc function. So the arc function will allow you to create an arc from an existing line. So you cannot create an arc without a line on your view. So for example, if I click on redraw over here to start from scratch, you can see that my arc function is not available. So I have to have a line so I can start my arc because the arc will be a tangent from that one. Okay. So one quick tip about this is that if you just want the arc, you can click the arc to start, then you're going to move, click on the previous line and delete it. Okay, so this is a way for you to create something that it has just the arc shape. So you create the line first, you anchor the arc tangent, and then you delete the first line, right? Sometimes you want to draw an arc that you cannot control exactly what is the 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 shape of the arc that you want. Let's say that I want to create an arc that's going to go straight from here. So you can go and create a line just to uh, create a new direction for that arc, basically, right? So once you have that done, you can go ahead and delete the line and then connect the points again, right? So this is one idea of creating arcs that are not tangent to a specific line, basically. So right now, this arc over here is not tangent to this line, right? So that's the idea. Cool. So you can create adjacent lines to anchor an arc, and then you can move the arc around and connect the dots to existing lines. Cool.
Pedro,
Yep.
Pedro, Pedro, can I add a couple use cases here?
Yep.
Just for folks, many of you probably already have arrived at some of the use cases, but one thing we see a lot is someone, you sketch out a fence line using the sketching tool, and then you get comments that the fence line is going to change, and some users do that to like delete and start again, right? You don't necessarily need to do that. Or if there's a gate or there's an opening or whatever for fences or guardrails, like, okay, we want to show guardrails on the slab edge, but we need an opening for a buck hoist, right? So you don't have to do the whole thing over again. You can use some of those tools to just delete
Yeah.
line, add points, add openings with the same underlying sketch. And then on the
Exactly.
maybe
So
I hope I don't jack your
no,
future
no.
here, but like the 3D line. So if you're doing like swept paths or like vehicles, the 3D line functions the same way. It's using the same underlying sketch. So those arcs you just showed is great for showing like vehicles, driving into sight and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So you can kind of with more precision understand the swept path of like a vehicle coming to sight, and then use the visual graph to animate that. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to clarify that the 3D line also uses the same concept.
Yeah, so to what Javi just mentioned, if I want to create an opening on this fence and not add a gate or just add an opening, basically what I would do, I would edit the sketch, click on the line function, add points over here to create the opening, and then select the middle part and delete it. Now you have a fence with the opening, right? So basically you can use the line to create breakpoints on the sketch as well. Cool. So that's the arc function. The circle function, again, super simple. You can click and drag and you will draw a circle, and then your tool will follow that circle shape, right? Of course, depending on what you're using, if you're using a fence, if you're using a zone, if you're using a 3D line, arcs and circles in general, like it will depend on that, because like the fence over here, for example, if I create a fence that has like panels that are quite long, it doesn't look like a circle anymore, but like it's following the shape of that circle, right? But for other tools, there are like free drawings like zones and 3D lines. That's not going to affect that much. The rectangle function over here, it's very similar. You just draw a rectangle right away. One thing about the rectangle tool is that it will always be aligned with the sketch alignment. So if our sketch as of now, by default, it aligns with the true north. So the rectangle tool will be useful only if you like working, if your true north and your project north, they align with each other. But the good thing is that we are already like working on the project north tool to allow you to create the sketches aligned with your project north. Okay. So the redraw function that I'm clicking over here several times is just to clear my sketch, and I can start drawing again from zero, right? So that's the idea. I use this redraw function a lot, especially when you use it combined with the projection tool. But basically just like clears up your sketch and you can start drawing again. Okay. So now when I confirm, my fence is over there. Cool. So another thing is the projection tool. This projection tool is like one of my favorite tools in cmBuilder in general because it allows me to save so much time when I'm drawing things, right? So the projection tool, like I think I mentioned this on the previous um, workshop, that before it would only apply to existing geometries like 3D models or massings, but now the projection tool also allows you to use zones as reference, or even like other resources that are controlled by lines. So for example, if I put this fence over here and I want to draw a zone that is exactly the same shape of the fence, I can click my zone, start my sketch, and then click on project and then select that fence, and then it will fill up that fence with the zone that I want. Cool. So the projection tool is great. You should try to use it, like to save some time. But keep in mind that you can also use the projection tool combined with other things. So for example, if I want to project the shape of this zone over here, and but I want to edit this. So like I start the projection of the zone, and I actually gonna use just these parts over here, right? So you can steal just a part of your zone sketch, basically. Cool. So these are the options that we have for that projection. The snapping feature over here, it's a feature that works best if you're flipping through 2D and 3D, right? Because you were able to select a shape and then click on snap and then say that you want that shape to be aligned with an existing face, right? So now that line over there is aligned with that, and that also applies to the points. So you can select a point and make it snap to a face, and the point will extend the line until it touches that face. Okay, so until it's aligned with that face. So like the snapping tool is super interesting to use whenever you have like excavation, for example, that you want to build excavations that are aligned with other cuts. So for example, if I create a cut over here and that cut generates an excavation, and then I want to create another cut that's gonna be aligned with that with this one, the first one, I can go into edit my sketch, select this, click on snap, then click over here, and now that line is aligned with that. I can select this line, click on snap, and then select this, and now this cut is aligned. Then I can just move this guy over here and have that cut connected with the other one. Cool. So this is a good way for you to use the snapping tool. Again, a tool that I use a lot to align things with other geometries, and so on. Okay. What else we have over here? Offset. Offset's an interesting tool because, for example, let's say that I want to place in an edge protection on top of this area over here of this slab. Actually, let me use the one below because the one below is going to be a little bit easier to visualize. So if I wanted to place in an edge protection over here, I'm going to go ahead and select it. I'm going to start my sketch at that elevation. So see, like the point that I selected was on top of the slab. So the sketch already is placed over there on the slab. Other tools will automatically snap to the ground, like massings and so on, but you can move it up as afterwards. That's no problem. And then when you click on project and select the shape, you have that shape over there. But my edge protection that I'm creating right now, I don't want it to be exactly at the edge of my slab. I want it to be a little bit closer, like in inwards. So I'm going to click on offset tool, and then I'm going to select my sketch. Then I can drag it in, or I can simply type in a value over here. I want this to be offsetted inwards by, I don't know, a meter. So when I hit that button now, like my whole sketch moves inwards by a meter. Okay. So when I hit OK, now I have my edge protection going on over there. So you see that like this edge protection created like some weird placement of these panels over here is because in my sketch I have a very small like segment of this line. So it means that like the software will try to place it that panel, but all the panel shapes and widths are kind of like you standardize. So in a situation like this, what I would do, I would basically just delete this line in the middle over here. Oh, sorry, delete the point, and then it will reconnect with the other point, and then that's it. You just need to adjust your sketch so there is not like super small segments of the line. Cool. The perpendicular.
Pedro,
Yep.
can I cut you off?
Yep.
Can you go back to what you just had? Did you just delete that?
Which one? The
Okay,
fence.
go back in there. Yeah,
Yep.
go to that guardrail. See how the brand, we did this last week, but just in case anyone missed it, if you have branding and the logos on the other side, can you show them just how to flip it onto the other side?
Yep. You
Just
can
boom,
flip it using
just
this
change it there. Yeah.
positioning over here.
So in case we get that question a lot too, with all the logo showing on the wrong side of the resource, you can just flip it with position, so you don't
Yeah,
have to
because
resketch from.
the order in which you draw the resource, if it's going to be counterclockwise or clockwise, will affect the final result. So it's interesting to have that tool to flip the logo.
Yeah, and
Cool.
it's just if for depending on the resource itself, like if it's a crane or a trailer or something like that, you have different preset locations too. So that little drop down will allow you to toggle different locations as well.
There you go. Awesome. The next constraint that I have over here, not constraint, but like a tool to help me draw this better is the perpendicular tool. So like, let's say that I drew a line like this, and I want to make sure that this line is perpendicular to the other one. So I can click on this, and I will select the line that I want to move first, and then the reference line, and then the line that I selected first is going to move, so it will be perpendicular to the other one, right? So that's the idea. Another idea is that you can do something like this, and you can use the parallel function to make sure that this line is parallel to this one, right? So the changes that are going to be applied will like affect the final result of your sketch, but you can use the perpendicular one, for example, like this, to bring it back to what it was before, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you can use a combination of these tools to create the shape that you want. And the last one, the equal one, is just to make sure that you have a line that is that you want them to be the same shape, or like in terms of like length. So you can go ahead and use that to control the length of this line to make it the same as the other one. Okay. So these are the tools that we have over here to use for the sketch. And let's understand a little bit about what we see over here in the properties. So basically the properties, there are two main options over here. So the sketch on allows you to define if you want your sketch to be placed on top of terrain and objects, or if you want it to be aligned with a Z plane, or if you want it to be aligned with a custom plane. So the custom plane is the most interesting one. And I will create a ramp over here so we can see how that works. So if I create a ramp, my excavation needs to adjust the boundary over here. Sorry about that. So let me just redraw my boundary. So the situation that just happened over here is that I changed my excavation, and the boundary that is usually automatically calculated to encompass the whole footprint of the excavation created a different calculation that I was expecting. So to fix that, you just need to go into your excavation feature, going to edit excavation settings, going to edit sketch to edit the sketch for the excavation boundary. And then you can make it as big as you want, just as long as it encompasses all the excavation operations that you have. Okay. But since the excavation is not the focus of today's session, I'm going to move past that. And what I mentioned about the sketching, you can anchor that on a custom plane, is that you can, for example, if I want to create a fence that will follow this shape over here, I can click on this and then I can go in here on my sketch surface and say that I want to show it aligned with this custom plane of this ramp right now, right? So it tilts the sketch to make it align with the ramp. And now you can go ahead and like draw a line over here, for example. But one thing to keep in mind for resources like that, the resources itself, they won't align with the sketch to be placed, like to start from the sketch normal. It will always be pointed up on Z, on the Z elevation. So you can use this to like adjust the shape that you want, like with the lengths and so on and so forth, right? But the idea is that your sketch now is aligned with that custom plane. Okay. Other things related to the sketch that I want to touch base today, and something that is very important whenever you like showing cmBuilder to new users, because the default application of cmBuilder in your settings over here, you have like these elements, most of these elements turned on, and the like I usually prefer to work with them turned off because it gives me like more freedom in terms and more clearer canvas to draw my stuff. But basically the length over here, if you turn off, you can turn off the length values. You can also edit the length values by just typing like the value that you want in here, and you can choose in which way your line is going to increase, if it's going to be one way or the other, right? So this is a good use of the length. You can do the same thing with your angle. So if I change this angle over here, I can choose which line is going to change by clicking on this flipping button, right? And yeah, but you can only do that if you have the length and the angles turned on. Area preview is just to give you like a, right now I cannot see because the zone is on top of it, but there is an area highlight going on over here that we turn on and turn off. You can see it from this location to show you what is the area that is encompassed by that sketch. The snapping feature is one that a lot of people like don't know, especially for new users, is that when you turn on the snapping feature, it will make your lines and elements snap to the vertical and horizontal references of your sketch. So this is something that sometimes people get a little bit like they don't know exactly what's going on, why your line is being snapped to these references. You just need to go in your settings and turn on the snapping, then you can freely add points now. So I almost never use the snapping tool, only when I really want to have something that is super aligned. But I prefer to work without the snapping tool. The 3D projection and guidelines over here is just to show you what is a 3D projection of that sketch onto the terrain, and also the guiding lines will show you if I move this uh, plane up. 1 second. So if I move my sketch upwards, you can see that like it's projected there down the terrain, and the guiding lines is to show me like where my point is gonna fall on the terrain. So that dashed line over there. Cool. So
Good.
yep.
Question from Eric. So actually, I'm answering your other question there. Oh, I don't seem to be able to add. Sorry, Eric. I'm trying to give you a screenshot of how to change the default branding to be off, but it doesn't look like I can add a screenshot in Q&A. I'll send it to you. So Eric asks, you can create a break hole in your fence, but it would be nice if you could create multiple breaks within a same sketch. Currently, you get an error message.
So that's one of the things that I was going to talk about right now, is that when you try to, like, every sketch can only have one continuous line. So if I try to create another line over here, I'm going to get an error message saying that I cannot create multiple shapes in the sketch. This is a current constraint at the software right now, but with your input, we can put that on our roadmap. But basically, in a situation for fences specifically, if you want to create several openings on your fence, there is a resource inside of resource equipment. And if you go into logistics and facilities and fences, you're going to find over here an opening in fence. So this allows you to add a transparent object to the fence like it was a gate, and you can move this around to create your openings, right? But just keep in mind that this is functioning as a gate, right? So it creates the opening, but it has like an object in there. So when you select it, it will affect, and like you can change the elements that you're working on and so on. Cool. But you can add more of these in several places of your fence. Okay. Yeah, so last thing that I want to show about the fence is that it's always good to learn how to use the hotkeys. So if you hover your mouse over here on the top of each one of these elements, you're going to see the hotkeys over there, C, A, L, M, R, and so on. So this is a good way for you to learn and like work a little bit more efficiently. And also, if you're working with your lines and you want to create lines that are like snap to each other, like perpendicularly and so on, every time that you hold shift, it will create an increment of 45 degrees of your previous line. So you can do that to create like constraints on how you move it. But also when you're using the move tool and you hold shift and move something, it will move that line parallel to where it was. And also if you do that for the points, you will move the point on top of the line that you're selecting, right? So holding shift while drawing a sketch, it really helps you create like the shapes a little bit clearer and more aligned with one another. Cool. Awesome. So this is the sketching feature. Just a quick reminder, a lot of people probably already know about some of these features, but I just wanted to give you guys a quick reminder about the best practices and so on and so forth. Okay. Next.
Sorry, did I miss? Did you show how to turn off the snap?
Yep.
Okay,
Snapping tool
my bad.
is
And then
over here.
Turn
Right.
that
So
up, yeah. And we've had a few people ask about True North or like versus Project North. That's something we actually used to have, pulled it out because it was causing problems, and something that we hope to bring back, or we're planning on bringing back in our
yep,
roadmap in the near future.
it's in the near future roadmap for sure. Cool. So going back to our presentation over here, next thing that I want to talk about is the new timeline settings, right? So if I want to create a presentation, and like when I hit play on my presentation, we're gonna see the timeline over here, the new timeline, where in the bottom you see the progress bar of that simulation. You see your branding over here at the top and the milestone names over there. But I already explained this in other sessions. So today I just want to show a little bit of an update on the UI of the settings. So this little button over here, when you click on this, you have a new set of controls to define how your timeline works. But basically, the first control is that you can define if you want to show the calendar date in the name of your milestones, or if you want to show a relative date. So relative date, basically, we're going to remove the calendar date from here, and in the bottom of your timeline bar, you're going to have like just a count of like the time unit that you want. And to define the time unit, you can go over here in the bottom and say, I want to show this in weeks, I want to show these in days, or in months, right? So you can also change how these things are displayed over here. It's up to you to control like what is best for your presentation, right? You can also choose to not include the timeline at all if you want to, but like a new feature that we added is the auto scale of the timeline. So for example, if I hit play right now, you will see that my timeline, the end date is over here, right? So it's in the middle of my screen. But if I go in this and I turn on my auto scale of the timeline, and I hit play again, now my end date is going to be over here in the bottom at the end, right? And basically what we do is we just like take your whole project time frame and snap it to the edges of your screen, so you can have like a more clear definition of like where your end date is. Cool. So timeline settings, this is it. Like in terms of branding, like for people that have branding on their subscription, you can also click on this to define different timeline colors and so on and so forth, borders and so on. But also you can change what is the branding logo that you want to show over there on the top. And this is interesting to create something that is a little bit more customized for your company.
I
Okay.
have two things to add, Pedro. Can I
Yep.
add two things? One is that's where you can add your client's logo to if you're doing a pursuit or something like that. So you can just upload multiple logos or brands to your company settings, and then you can just select what you want to show. If you want to show yours versus the client or whatever, we're going to add more functionality to that in the future as well. And the second thing is for those who, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder a little bit, but if we're on this topic, Pedro, for those who watch our Key Feature Friday every Friday on LinkedIn, we showed it 2 weeks ago, but a new feature coming Monday, I think, is you can set a couple, so you can set basically like a change, every change in status in a milestone, it can flash green or red for demo or something. So that new feature about like the highlight on new things or things that are ending will be accessible here as well, I believe. Pedro,
Cool.
do you know?
I don't know when it's going to be deployed.
Oh, so do you know where? I think it's going to be in the same settings there, though, if I remember correctly. So
Yeah.
there'll be another setting here for like in the presentation settings to be able to set it in presentation mode to like all the new things that happen in a milestone just flashes green
Yep.
or
That's cool.
whatever color.
Yep. So that's it for the timeline settings that we recently did a little change. And now let's talk about transformation handles. So this one is going to be a little bit more technical. So it's just to help you guys understand a little bit more on how the handles are displayed in cmBuilder and so on. So let's use this crane over here as an example. So when I double click on this crane and I start my move and rotation actions over here, on the top, I have handles display on, right? So there are two options, part origin and user defined. So this is going to be the same for several different objects in cmBuilder, right? So if I double click like a zone, for example, and do the same thing, there's part origin and user defined, right? So part origin basically is the 00, the default 00 of that object. So in this crane over here, it's in the middle of my mast over there, right? So it defines what is the center of that object from the library. However, if I click on user define, I can select relocate handles and then I can place my handles wherever I want. So basically, this is going to be helpful for you whenever you were, like, for example, if you wanted to rotate an object according to another location, you can go over here and then click rotate, and then you're now rotating this object according to that point instead of rotating the object according to this point, right? So these are the two things that to keep in mind, right? So user define is you define where that handle is going to be placed, whereas the part origin is defined by the default shape of that object. So for linear objects like the resource, oh, sorry, like the zones, lines, and linear objects like fences and so on, the part origin will always be the same origin as the origin of your sketch. So this center point over here of the V and H lines is where your part origin is. But of course, you can change this user define and place it whatever you want, like double clicking on that object. And this is super useful whenever you're placing a drawing, for example, and you want to zoom in a location to align the drawing according to that location specifically. So let's see over here, for example, I have this drawing over here. So if I am editing this drawing and I click on the move function, and now I want to take this drawing and I want to align it. Let me just do one thing. I want to align that drawing by looking at this area over here. I cannot see the handles anymore because my handles are in the middle of my drawing. But if I zoom in at this location, let me just like fade this out, and I use my user define, I can place my handles in here, and now I can use the movement function like at this location instead of relying on zooming out to see my handles and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is the general like settings for handles in for most of the objects in cmBuilder, but for imported models, this works in a little bit differently. So like, if I go into a model like this one, for example, I can let me go into that model. I can go into the move function. And when I click on move, now instead of part user defined and part origin, I have other options over here. My options are project origin, site origin, bounding box center, and user origin. Project origin, basically, this handle will be placed on the origin point of that model. So a lot of times people will bring in a model into the scene builder and they go into locate that and select project origin, and they can see the handles because the handles are too far away from where your geometry is, right? So this to keep in mind that this is the origin point of this geometry, right? But a site origin can be defined on the project. So whenever you from wherever you exported this, you can define the site origin if you have that model combined with other models. And bounding box center, basically, we're going to take the geometry that you have over there. We're going to calculate it from the bounding box center and place the handle in the middle, right? So this is important to understand because a lot of times you're going to be working with models that you get from consultants. These models might be geolocated and you don't know how to move them around. Like, for example, this model over here, it's not geolocated, but this one is, right? So if I go and select this model, now my bounding box center is over there in the middle. That's great. But if I change this to project origin, I cannot even see where the handles are because they are very far away from my geometry. And this happens whenever you have a model that is geolocated, but you don't know that the model is geolocated. So like your origin is very far away from where your geometry actually is. And a good way to visualize that, to understand that, is by looking at these values over here. So you see how these values are super like it's high values, right? So the like 400,000 meters away from where I am right now, so it means that this model is geolocated. Cool. So the same thing about the user origin, you can also use that. So you can click to relocate your handles and place your handles wherever you want and like move things according to this and so on and so forth, right? So that's the idea of how to control your handles. Okay. And another thing that I want to show as well is that this panel over here, it's showing you what is the distance between that point of where your handles are, sorry, and the distance between that and the origin point of your map. So this point over here has these coordinates in relation to the center of my map. Okay, so keep that in mind because this can help you like position things and move things around with a little bit more precision. And the rotation is basically the same idea, right? The rotation according to that main true north and so on. These values over here on the side there, the increments in which you're gonna like move these values up and down. So sometimes when you're positioning something like freehand positioning, let's say that I'm positioning this model and I can see that the model is not very aligned with that street over there. So I can go over here instead of like rotating my and like really trying to get it like aligned correctly. Sometimes it's easier for you to put in like a small increment over here and you keep hitting plus to add that small increment to your rotation, right? So this is just the value that is going to be added or removed for this value over here if you click on the add and subtract function. Okay, so there's a little bit about those handle placements. So keep that in mind whenever you are locating something and you're moving that stuff around. If you're not sure if the model is geolocated or not, like on the origin, like on the source software that the model was created, just go through these placement handles over here so you can understand better how to move it around. Okay. Any things to add, Javi? You good?
Nothing to add. Any
Okay,
questions? Of
cool.
course, pop them in the chat if you have questions or the Q&A, and we'll tackle them as they come.
Awesome. Okay, next step on our presentation would be talking about some important models updates, right? So we have three to show today. So the first one is to talk about Revit and default features. So if I ever bring in a Revit model in cmBuilder before the default features were not applied. So right now, if I want to upload a file and it's going to be a Revit file. So let's say custom sex workshop, support material, simple structure. So when I upload this file now, it's a Revit file. It's gonna. Do I need to refresh my view? I think it's because I already have a version over there. Sorry. So the idea is that now the default filters that you had before with IFC files now are applied to Revit files as well, which doesn't look like much, but it's a great improvement because Revit files, like if you just drag and drop them without opening that file beforehand, you never know what you're bringing into the software, right? So you might bring in like parts that are hidden, parts that you didn't filter beforehand, and so on and so forth. And you couldn't apply those filters before, and now you can do them. So like if I let me try that again. It's not uploading. I think it's because this file specifically, it's a repetition.
You could do it in a new scenario, right?
Yeah, but basically, the improvement is just that, like when you import, like now you have these features available as well for the Revit import, right? And another improvement that we've done is that these are now coming in with default configurations of IFC classes that are turned off and IFC classes that are turned on, because basically we did that because like a lot of people were bringing in files, IFC files and Revit files without noticing that they were bringing in furniture. Ceilings, all of those small parts that we usually suggest that you remove from your model, right? So now once you bring it in, like you're gonna have default configuration of those elements over there, and then you can simply apply those or customize it the way that you prefer. Cool. Another update that we've done recently is the transparency, right? So now you can apply a transparency to an object that you have imported. Like sometimes you're going to bring in objects that, let's say, a window, and the window doesn't come in with a transparency because it was not set up beforehand in the original file. Now you can simply go into that element, and then in here on the color, you can select to add a custom color, and you can change the transparency of the color that you have over there, and that transparency will show you, like, will be applied to that part specifically. Okay, keep in mind that this is it is a consistent like uh setting, meaning that you cannot make the transparency show up at some point and then go away at another point. You're actually changing the transparency that is applied to that object, and it's going to stay there for the whole simulation. But that's something that we want to improve with the feature that Javi just mentioned, where you can define what are the colors that you're going to see in specific moments of your presentation. Cool. So this is it for that transparency. And the other one is something that I won't be able to show right now, but basically, whenever you have parts that have been removed on your model. So let's say, for example, that you import this model over here, and I don't want to deal with these ramp right now. So I'm gonna go in this ramp, and then I'm gonna edit my model element, and then I'm gonna remove those ramp parts from this original model. So when I hit update over here, this will just refresh my view to show me now a version of that model where those parts doesn't exist anymore, right? I can bring them back if I want by simply editing the model. And let me show you how to do that. So you're going to edit the model, and you're going to click on edit tree structure, and then you can see what are the parts that have been removed from this view. So you can select the whole model and then click on the restore to bring back the parts that you have removed. But basically, the update that we've done recently is that if I bring in a new version of this model right now, those parts that were removed will also be removed on the new version if we can track those parts, right? So whatever changes you apply to this model in this scenario, once you sync in the new model, it will be applied to the new model as well. Okay, cool. So these are the three main things that we've done with imported models recently, right? So filters on Revit and default placement of the filters, transparency applied to the model parts, and the removed parts syncing.
One thing I'll add to this, just because we know we got some OGs on the call that have been around for a while with us. So another thing that you will not notice, but you may notice in some ways, is in the last month or 6 weeks, our like engineering side of things, we just improved our model conversion speed times and overall improvement process friction. We had a kind of a queuing system before, so we've got blasted with a bunch of models all at once. We had a bit of a queuing system. Now we have like a much more dynamic spawning system where like if we have a whole bunch of input, a whole bunch of models happening at once, we just dynamically expand our capacity and we just convert things a lot much faster. Hopefully you're seeing things converting faster and not having to wait as long and just generally having a better experience with this. But so just so you know that we spent a lot of hard work on improving this whole process. If you notice something that didn't convert correctly, we have like some automated notifications that will let us know if there's something, if a model didn't convert or something that we might want to investigate or like reach out to a customer. But if you just see something looking funny, just always don't be shy to reach out to us and we'll dive into it and figure out what's going on. It's a lot of edge cases when it comes to model conversion because we're trying to solve for many different authoring platforms, right? Many to one. So it makes it a bit challenging. So I just wanted to reiterate that too. So overall, you should see much better speed times and conversion, all that kind of good stuff.
Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. The next part of the presentation is talking about some tips and updates. This first one is going to impact a lot of you guys. Like some of you have requested this already. So basically, you'll probably already know that like most of the models in our library, you will, once you place them, not most, all of the models in our library, when you place them, let me put in a container over here. At that object that you place, when you go into the moving function, you can define if the positioning is going to be either dynamic or constant, right? So dynamic means that this object can move in between milestones. So if I go to the next milestone and this object is set up to be dynamic and I move it to a different location, it means that when I go back, it has the first position and then the second position is shown on the second milestone, right? And if I change this to be constant, you're going to notice that while I was active in this milestone, I changed it to constant. So if I go back, the previous position is not there anymore. Like it means that that position is constant throughout the whole timeline. So that's the difference, right? Dynamic, you can move in between milestones, and constant means that you will have like that position, the same location. What is the update? The update is that now you can go into your user settings over here above, and you can define what is going to be your default positioning method for you individually as a user, right? So you can say that every time that you place in an object, that object is going to come in constant, or every time that you place an object, it's going to be as dynamic, right? So that we did this because there is like half of our user base wants constant as default, half of our user base wants default by dynamic by default. So now you guys can choose. Basically, that's the idea.
It's a
Cool.
democracy. It's a democracy, Pedro.
Democracy, exactly.
Exactly. You do it yourself. It's a highly contentious topic on this because some people don't like the fact that things are moving and like, how did this move? But they may not know that either them or someone else accidentally moved it, and because it was set to dynamic, it will actually, or it's set to constant, and they go refresh the page and they notice it's back to where it started, and they're like, why did it change? So, anyways, it's in the weeds there, but that's the
Yeah.
genesis of that feature.
But if you ever get to the point where you confuse why things are moving, probably it's because they are dynamic. But you can also look at this view over here at the bottom, like the timeline details. So you can define, for example, if this object is dynamic and I move it, now over here there is an item saying that the position and the rotation for this object has been updated. So you can see in which milestone that object has you accidentally moved it and so on. Cool. The next update is about the reflection rendering. So some of you probably have seen this in Key Feature Friday already, especially because it shows my creepy face over there in Windows. Thank you, Javi, for that. So basically, the idea is that for transparent objects like windows and glasses and things like that, you can go into your settings and you can now turn in reflections on windows. Basically, just gonna render like the reflections of the things that are behind you and so on and so forth. So it gives you like a little bit of more kind of like realistic rendering to the view. So like if you compile that with your environmental lighting and different backgrounds and so on, you can create something that's quite interesting and visually appealing to show your customer and blast them off of their socks. Cool. The last two updates that I want to show today is the timeline display, right? So, not updates, sorry, tips, but basically, this is something that I thought about this the other day with a customer, where like sometimes you're gonna want to control a little bit about the sizes of the elements that you're seeing here on the screen. Like, so for example, if it's the size of the milestone label over here, the size of the timelines and whatnot. So there's no predefined way to do that in cmBuilder with like in cmBuilder you cannot control that, but you can use your browser zooming function to increase the controls that you see on your screen. It's gonna look weird like at first like that, but once you play from the beginning, you're gonna see that your milestone labels over here are bigger, and like you branding is bigger as well, so you can kind of like control a little bit on what you want to see at that location, at that moment of the presentation with your zooming function, right? So it depends on your use case when you're exporting the video and so on. And the last thing that I want to show is a little spoiler alert, and but it's an experimental feature that we have already put in place. I haven't showed that to everyone yet, but you can all try on your own by yourselves over there. Basically, you can go into your user settings over here and scroll all the way down and then turn on the user new layout, right? So this will refresh your page automatically, and what you're gonna see is our intended version of what a new layout would be for cmBuilder. And basically, the idea is that we're going to move all the controls that are over here in the bottom to the left-hand side of your screen. And also the tree structure is going to be kind of like or expanded all the way to the bottom of your screen, and you can turn it on and off from here. You can like hide or collapse the tree structure, but basically all the commands are reorganized. Like some of the commands will be compiled in different ways. So for example, right now we have a terrain category, and inside here you're going to have like excavation operations and then custom terrain, the custom terrain tool showing over here. Now buildings will have like all the simple massing, detail massing, the resources are shown over here, and then the annotation categories like zones, labels, and lines, they are compiled in one single group, and so on and so forth. There is a lot of like small changes over here. Like for example, you can add objects directly from your tree by clicking on the plus button over here. You can already do this over here as well with the current tree structure that we have, and so on. But the main idea of this change in the layout is for us to clear the bottom part of our screen to have more things over there like in the interface. So the idea is that later in the future we have like the animation of resources control over there at the bottom, maybe some Gantt charts, maybe some resource timelines. So basically we're just freeing up that space, that real estate, to add more elements in there, right? So give it a try, everyone, if you want, and let us know what is your first impressions, and like if you have any suggestions to of things to move and so on and so forth. Cool.
All right, can I chime in? So overall, so I've been using this quite a bit, and we'd love your feedback, good, better, and different. Actually, if you collapse that tree, it's just one thing that people like. It's just much cleaner. Like it keeps the page. Like if you click tree and just get rid of that bar, like it, theory, it's just like a lot more canvas to work, easier to understand, kind of put anything in there. But we, when you're making a UI change, I guess we very much value your feedback. So if you think it's better or worse, it's not fully done yet. So there's a couple things like I've already flagged that we need to improve, and we're going to iteratively work on this. But it's definitely, we believe, cleaner, and then probably where we should go in a direction where we very much want to hear back from users before we make a big change like that. But yeah, use it and let us know what you think.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, so this brings us to the end of our presentation today. So just a quick recap of what the things that we talked about. We talked about the sketching feature. We did like a quick review of all the elements in there. What are the updates on the timeline that we have? transformation handles, like how to manage them, where to place, where they will show up once you use different settings, the important model updates, like some small things here and there that can improve your workflow, and the tips and tricks, especially the one related to the dynamic and constant default definition on your user settings. And also, please try the experimental layout and let us know how it goes, right? So from now on, you guys are all good to go if you want, but also you can hang around like we and ask questions and so on. Cool.
Any questions? Let us know. Hammer us. We got the time, and then again, you always can book a session right from the app inside the help area. Oh, we got one coming in hot. Oh, good stuff. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. Thanks, Juan. Yeah, generally speaking, we if you have questions or if you want to book a session to go deeper into something specific for your project, just reach out to us. And we'll do another workshop in the last week of June. Good job,
Yeah.
Pedro.
I like that, like the message that you sent with the LinkedIn link to the Key Feature Friday. It shows exactly your the
I
top of
wasn't
your
hoping
head.
for that. That was not by design. That was not by design. My kids will give me a hard time with that one.
Uh,
Color change by stage is I've experienced that with my hair. That's for sure. I didn't have so many gray hairs before I started hanging out with you, Pedro.
yeah, that's true. Cool.
Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank you.
great.
Okay.
Thanks, Hash. Oh, wait,
Oh, here's a question.
we got one. We got a live one. If you draw a fence and you drop backwards, is there a way to switch it?
Mm,
So you want to see the green screen on the outside of the fence. Oh, we got
yeah.
two. There you go, Pedro. You're off the hook just yet.
So first one, Richard. Unfortunately, we don't have that yet. The ability for you to flip it, but that's something that we already are considering in the feature updates for the resources. So this is a good opportunity to ask everyone to let us know what are the improvements they would like to see on the resource features, right? So like there are many things that we could spend our time improving, like the resource features, the way they place it, the way they are parameterized, the way that the sketch interacts with it. So if there's anything that you guys can think of, just let us know. Just go over here in the question mark and do a feature request, and let us know what are the improvements that you want, because we are compiling those to like apply later, right? So yeah, so the clockwise and counterclockwise, Eric, it depends on the feature, on the resource that you're selecting. Usually I draw clockwise. It's my go-to. And sometimes I see that a resource is actually like inverted or something like that, and then I'll just flip it, right? But the idea is, the main one is you go in clockwise. Clockwise this way, right? Yeah, clockwise.
Yes.
Okay, so let's see what Adam mentioned over here. Is there a feature to host utilities to the site file and follow the contours on the grade? What do you mean, like site utilities that are already there, like for you to create inside cmBuilder, or to import, right? Because you can import utilities as a model and they will follow the shapes that they were created originally. But in terms of it to follow the grade inside cmBuilder, what we suggest, if you want this to be just used as an indicator of where the utilities are, you can either use the resources, and then in the resources you have over here site conditions. There are some elements over here that you can use, for example, electrical. There's like this electric line over here, but let's see, there is a one
I
that you
think
can
he's
draw on
thinking
the ground.
below grade. So he's saying change the depth below grade. So we do have like manholes and piping. So and you can set the grade or the angle of the pipe, right? But it's
Yeah,
that.
so
But can you
some
like
reason.
offset? Can you offset to the like to the finished grade? You can say like offset by 6 feet or whatever, and then sloping at
No,
2%.
like it won't
I don't know if
follow
you
the
can do that.
grade. It won't follow the grade, but like for example, you can add up, like say for example, like a electric line here. So this electric line will have like some parameters for you to change the angle that where it was created. You can like increase the length, you can increase the invert and whatnot. And the way that we created this is per segment. It's just, and it has this little like ball over here in the beginning, just so you can identify where these elements are. But if you were to create this set of, like, I don't know, site utility design, you would need to add a couple of these and then adjust the height and the angle that they are placed so they connect with one another, right? But we were discussing internally if we should spend some time on creating like a site utility builder, for example, like a utility builder in the future, and that's something that is it's in the discussions for us to start researching how a feature like that would look like. Cool.
Another question. You saw that the sketch one. Do you want to take that
Using
one?
project, we convert the sketch to multiple lines instead of an arc. The reference. Oh, okay. And around it, this is a software limitation. Bogs down the excavation size. Yeah. So for circular elements, using the projection is just because like it's a little bit harder to convey because the software will understand like what are the faces that composes that circle, that rounded geometry. So there's nothing that we can do in terms of the projection because when it's converted, it converts with those shapes. It's not like you are in Revit and you using the actual vector that was created to create that shape and you can edit that, like once the geometry is created, it creates with faces and triangles, so we can only project those faces once they are imported. But my suggestion is for a situation like this, at that part, you can delete the lines that were projected and then you recreate them with a circle or with the arc function. Cool. After exporting the pipe model from FBX or XML into cmBuilder from CD3D, any way we can split the pipes? Yeah, not yet. So like this is probably the main feature that we have been working recently is the split model function, where like for example, you will be able to define a line and use that line to split this slab over here in two pieces, for example. So like not just the slab, but also the pipes or whatever geometry that you have imported, you will be able to split that into using references that you draw in cmBuilder. And this is also something that will be used for like drone scans, for example. You can create an opening and remove like these trees, right? So you can create an opening and remove this building over here, right? So that's the main idea for the split tool is to use it for pour breaks, to split like elements like this, for example, where you imported that element and the wall is just like spanning the whole building height, and also like to edit the drone scans.
Yeah, so I was just saying this. I've been working on this for quite some time. We actually had a proof of concept like 7-8 months ago, but the challenge is that we bumped up against some technical hurdles that required us to actually change underlying tech to be able to support this. So we had to go back to the drawing board, upgrade our infrastructure and our tech a little bit to be able to do this now. But now we're literally in this sprint, like we're working on this at the moment, and we hope to get this live. Because at the moment, the segment, however your tree structure is separated, you can interact with the parts inside the tree to show stuff, but it will have to have already been split in the way you want it before you import it to cmBuilder or in multiple models. But after this, you'll be able to just select, like, be able to split it yourself, which is a huge thing for us and huge for the company. Any other minutes? We can keep hanging out here. Any other questions? This is great. Thanks for the question. Ian, that's fantastic. Oh, this is like the Oscars. Music started coming on. You're gonna
Just
get
that
yanked off stage.
this music's so good that I want to bring it back, but
Okay.
I can hang around and
You were
answer
vibing.
questions.
You were vibing at the beginning of this. You were definitely vibing. You were on fire today, Pedro.
Yeah.
Must have been inspired by science fiction.
Definitely. Cool.
Okay.
So
Hang out
let's
for
wrap
another
it up
minute or
then.
two and wrap it
Oh,
up.
yeah, I think
Okay,
it's good.
thank you all. Thank you all for your contributions. It was a good one.
Cool. Have a nice one, everyone. Bye then.
Everyone, thank you.